Welcome to Your Coach, Your Money, where we educate and motivate young professional athletes to make great financial decisions. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Victoria from the Windy City.
Very exciting.
So excited, Victoria Dorsano. I hope I did not butcher your last name.
You got it.
Victoria is an absolute amazing Instagram profiler. She's got amazing stuff out there. She's got a YouTube channel. She's launching amazing exercise equipment. She's a CEO. We are blessed today with this amazing personality. Super excited. Victoria, how you doing?
Awesome. I love that intro. Can I just take that recording and use that forever moving forward? I'll just take that to my own. I appreciate that. That was the most enthusiastic intro I've gotten.
One thing you'll find about me and Mark is that we're very fire and ice, right? And that's why we work so well together. You know, like
we'll let you guess who's who.
Oh my God. So, I mean, I want you to start right off, Victoria. You know, tell us a little bit about yourself and let you know we can kind of chat about what's going on in your life and where you came from and where you are.
Yeah, man. So I always like to say I'm a life enthusiast. I like to, constantly do new things, challenge myself, try new things. And I hate to always introduce myself as like, hey, I'm Victoria. This is what I do for a living, blah, 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 because that's always changing. Just as an example, my newest hobby that I'm into and how I identify now, which is funny, is a roller skater. I'm into the roller skating scene now in Chicago. So every Tuesday night, you can catch me at a roller rink here in the Chicagoland area, trying not to fall on my. Did we swear on this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes they let us get away. Mergliata was on with us about a year ago, and he was dropping them, and I was like, Dan, no, stop.
It'll be more PG, but yeah, try not to fall on my ass. But I just really like to have fun with like trying new things, challenge myself in new ways, and that same goes for business. I've never went out to establish like a Instagram following or a YouTube channel. Really, that wasn't like my primary goal, but it just kind of happened as a byproduct of exploring kind of what set my heart on fire at the time and just like going after that. And always having a little bit of a strategy behind it. But I think that's if you had to wrap my personality in a nutshell, it's just somebody who's always trying to learn new things, try new things, and really enjoy life to the fullest.
Yeah, I feel like you said it perfect. You're someone that can adapt, right? And I feel like I go back to the college athlete piece, being a competitor. When you're a college athlete, I was a Syracuse guy, and you went to Loyola, right?
Yeah.
Right. Go Wolves.
Havoc the Wolf. Right?
Go
Ramblers.
Wolves. Ramblers. I wasn't sure. I was an orange, right? I was citrus. I was very easy. I was an orangeman. But in all honesty, being a college athlete, you have to learn how to be mature and you have to integrate into different social groups. You have to be able to moderate and change through different, situations in your life. So being an athlete usually lends itself to being a really good business owner or a business person on a team because you understand what it is to be a teammate.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Mark was a phenomenal X Games guy. He rode dirt bikes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
super cool.
And your team is, your team could be as simple as your pit crew. It could be as complicated as other people that are on your team you're playing with.
Yeah.
I think beach volleyball is a passion of mine. I know that's a passion for you as well. And there's nothing better than having a good teammate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in 2-on-2, it's all about your teammate.
You got to have
it's about how you gel.
You got to have a good team. And, that's where I want to make sure that our listeners today understand. So, Victoria, you run a lot of different businesses. So I guess let's talk about the one that's most important or most exciting for you. What's the newest and most important thing in your business career that you're behind? Because I've been seeing a lot of stuff. The second I type your name in now, it's like I get 30 different things. So I'm like, is it the fitness freak? Is it the coaching services? Like, what's the most important thing?
Yeah,
it's so hard to decide, and this is probably one of my biggest strengths and weaknesses is that I love to do new things, but it's also like a little bit all over the place all the time. And that's okay. I've learned to manage that chaos a bit, but I think right now, just because it's top of mind, and I was just talking to a physical therapist about this. So what I've really come to love doing and kind of spend a lot of my free time doing and not necessarily getting paid for it, just because it's a huge passion project of mine, is helping athletes who have gone through ACL injuries in particular. It was an experience of mine. I had a very rough go with a knee injury. And thankfully it was after playing, in college and this was only 3 years ago. But then my kneecap fractured after that. It was just this whole long thing. And a lot of the struggle that I went through was a byproduct of this process of ACL recovery not being streamlined and not being taught really well and not providing the education. There wasn't a lot of education available for athletes going through this about how to really make the most of their recovery, unless they have unless they're a pro athlete and have like a full team behind them, right?
You got a
And they're getting the
team, you
most
got a
advanced
medical
treatments and
specialist,
things like that.
Yeah.
But most of us aren't. And, a lot of people go through this injury. It's one of the most common, athlete injuries out there. And there's so many people that have longstanding issues with their knees. And as an athlete, when you have an identity as an athlete and your knees get taken out, it's just so hard to reconfigure who you are in that space. And, if I can help some athletes through that process mentally, develop some strengths in other areas while they are going through the rehab process, but also find the best ways to recover smoothly and share what I've learned throughout the process and collaborate with the PT on this. I'm super happy to do that. So I'm constantly messaging people that are going through ACL rehab, going through their surgery, sharing a little bit about my experience and kind of what the best research is showing for moving forward and having the best healing trajectory so that they can get back to their sport as soon as possible and as safe as possible so they don't have to deal with the high re-tear rate that ends up happening with a lot of athletes that go through that. So
there's a huge second
that's one of my
rate.
recent passion projects I have going on right now.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would imagine that, just piggybacking what you just said, I would imagine, part of the other, aspect of recovery that we don't see is the anxiety of feeling like you physically are falling behind in your sport. Not being able to exercise, not being able to do the habit and pattern that you're used to create a winning style. Right. If you're laid up for months at a time.
Well, ACL is 9 months minimum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Aaron Rodgers is like 3 weeks or something, apparently.
That was an Achilles.
Any athlete listening to that, that's not a good timeline to follow because, again, he's got a whole
team of people, right?
Yeah. And I just know from your bio that, you specialize in behavioral change and, maybe talk a little bit about, that change that has to happen mentally to develop better eating patterns, develop better patterns within your sport and your routine.
Yeah, a lot of it is that flexibility, like you were saying, Matt, about that flexibility and agility you have as an athlete and being able to apply that in a different way than you're used to, because normally we're used to doing that, in a physical capability, and this time it's more of like a mental, emotional side of things. And I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out what type of person you want to be, the behaviors and the patterns that you want to bring into your life. So whether that's eating healthier or, doing a particular bad habit less, telling yourself, okay, what are the types of habits I want to do? And what is the type of person that would be doing this? And then trying to embody that type of person, becoming that person and taking on as an identity. Because until that really happens, that process of actually re-identifying yourself as a person who's doing these things regularly, it's really hard to make those new habits stick. So a lot of the things I'm taking athletes through and just my clients through and in the health coaching process as well is helping them to become the person who just does these things as part of who they are, rather than somebody who is trying to exercise. They're just a person. They're just a person that goes to the gym now. They're a gym goer, and that's who they've become. Or they're just a healthy eater, or as we were talking before the recording, just a vegan if they're going that route of thing.
I'm just a vegan. That's all. I'm just going to eat one way. I mean, but I think you're touching on a lifestyle approach, which I think people are starting to really adopt to, right? I feel like with the amount of information that's flowing in the world that we're in, and I still strength train. I still teach kids how to strength train. And one of the most important things is teaching. I have young kids I work with between the age of 13 and 20, right? On different needs they have. But one of the most important things is education, right? What should I put in my body? What's regulated by the FDA, right? Should I drink Monster energy drinks or should I drink coffee? You know what I mean? How do I gain muscle appropriately? And I feel like there's just sometimes too much information isn't a good thing. And I can say that for finance as well as for eating well, right? I can go online and find 10 articles that say why I should eat these 3 foods. And then in 10 minutes later, I can go find 10 different articles on why I shouldn't eat them.
Yeah.
Right? So who do I believe?
Yeah,
Who do I believe?
And it mirrors finance, a lot because, a lot of times we tell people we're a behavioral or a life coach for finance.
Right.
Our two things is education and motivation, and that motivation end, just as in diet, saving, it's a habit that you have to
Every
build.
day.
It's a commitment. It's a mindset of going in and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to better my life. I'm going to, improve my experience for my family. And there's so much psychology behind investing and dieting and exercising, but I don't think a lot of advisors put a lot of time into the psychology of it.
I mean, but that's an important piece. And Victoria, you're kind of circling around that psychology of how do I make these choices every day? What does my routine look like? And I love how I was reading over some of the stuff that you sent us and about fad diets, right? You got influencers out there, right? Like what's a guy, the caveman guy? What's the guy's name? I always
right? The Liver King.
The Liver King. Like, this guy's got like the steroids just oozing out of him, right? And I'm like, okay, listen. Listen, I've worked out for 18 years. I never ate perfect, but I've never had a six pack, right? I've never had muscles rippling off of me. And I went to the gym every day, like I'm a big guy, but some people just have great, amazing genetics. And then you add in great diet and exercise, and then you get a phenomenal shredded physique, right? Yeah. Some people, it could take 5 times the amount of time to get to that same exact body type, right? But this being synonymous here with investing, you could have great saving habits and just not do enough or be scared or listen to the wrong person and put yourself in such a bad position. And it's crazy, Victoria, because the majority of the people we've had on Your Coach Your Money, usually the story we get is, well, some guy in a suit came talk to us about money. I signed a contract, and $400,000 or $500,000 later, I didn't know what happened.
And then I fired them, and I realized I have to get my act together.
Holy smokes, who do I trust? How do I trust people with that step in my life? So that's why we're doing what we're doing, is to try to educate young athletes who are coming into money. What do I do with it? Who do I trust?
Yeah. And I'm curious from you guys' perspective with certain athletes that, I mean, a lot of them come into wealth so quickly and so much. Do you advise, and maybe this is a more specific conversation for later, but do you advise them to have a few different professionals, not necessarily advice wise, but as far as investing, to be able to diversify their assets across the board in case, not that you guys would, but in case that, something does happen.
There's a knucklehead.
In those areas.
Yeah, usually the knucklehead is associated with a person that helps the athlete get the contract, right? So there's an athlete, they get a contract or an endorsement, and then sometimes, or most of the time, there's someone that guy knows or that gal knows, and then there's just very thin veiled connection, right? And then, okay, well, the trust is just going to perpetuate rather than me going and finding a fiduciary, right? Which is a big word, which like you have your degree from the American Council on Exercise, which is your health and behavior degree, right? The license. That creates a responsibility, right, to you and your client, just like a fiduciary, right? Mark and I, people that are licensed appropriately, have a duty to make sure people are given the right information.
Yeah. And where a lot of advisors do is they try to wrap that together and say we do it all, versus saying,
hey, we have different people.
We want you to have an independent counsel, a CPA, independent attorney, and the great thing about having people work together that are independent is it is checks and balances.
It is.
And sometimes we fight.
Yeah, there's some headbutting sometimes,
but we're all
right?
fighting for the client's best interest. Yep. It's like any think tank, right? It's the more people with good ideas and good intent that are together, the better the plan is. And the problem is athletes a lot of times are steered in one direction because of maybe the agent relationship, and they rely on the agent for everything. And the agent says, "Oh, I got this guy all lined up for you." But they don't do their own due diligence to make sure that it's watching.
I'm listening to a podcast, a couple of years old, and one of the NFL players, somebody I knew, is like, I got $3-4 million in a checking account. Okay, so hopefully they realize that anything over $250,000 potentially isn't protected if the bank goes out of business, right? Depending on what type of protections, FDIC, SBIC, right? Whatever the bank has, you shouldn't have that much money in a checking account. You should spread it across 5 checking accounts. Or 7 or 10 checking accounts, right?
Yeah.
So, that's important for the athlete side, Victoria. But I want to talk for a second. So you got a lot of stuff going on your side, right? So I saw this. Are you launching the Fitness Freak Are you launching this apparatus? I saw this apparatus and I'm like, this thing is cool.
Oh, so
I love
yeah,
Nordic
it's right,
Hyper.
it's right there.
Is it right
It's
there?
behind me.
Oh, it's in the
Yeah.
background. I love Nordic Hypers. I love hyper extensions. It's an exercise not many athletes understand how to develop posterior chain, how to develop hamstring strength, how to lengthen a hamstring, how it
Yeah.
affects your pelvis, your pelvic tilt, your hip flexors, right? So I saw that and I was like, oh, dude, this is wicked. I hope this is yours. Right? I don't know if you're selling it or if it's yours. I don't know how it works.
So I actually partnered, and this is kind of, what happened as a byproduct of a lot of me sharing my ACL story and sharing some of my own rehab process and things that I was doing. Is I partnered with this really awesome brand. Their name's Freak Athlete. Benji is the head of Freak Athlete. So this isn't my machine, but I partner closely with them
Got it. Okay.
and work with them to create content and share about all the cool products that they make, because they are also athletes. All of them have played, pretty elite level soccer and different types of, most of them soccer, I think, that are a part of that team. But they are awesome, and they are really set on creating economical equipment that can do multiple things. Really, like this thing can do 6 different machines in just one machine. So you can do multiple different exercises. And they're really trying to make sure that athletes can prevent those types of ACL injuries from happening in the first place, and training the posterior chain. So I've become such a big fan, and we just teamed up and started making content together. So I don't own it, but I do work with them.
Yeah,
I'm a huge
I wasn't
fan of
sure.
their company.
I
Huge
wasn't
fan
sure.
of their company.
Okay, well, I mean, listen, I think that's an awesome thing, though, because again, this is where I'm always telling young athletes and even athletes in college, right? Always be thinking big, always be thinking outside the picture that you normally see. Because listen, when I retired, when I got done with football, I had no clue what I was going to do. I didn't think outside that box because all I saw was football. And then when I retired, I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? I mean, it was 15 years ago. Instagram wasn't a thing. Facebook wasn't a thing. We have flip phones.
Well,
right?
ironically, for athletes or type A personalities, it's a very common trend that we find when we have guests on the show. The one question we always ask them is, did you plan your transition from retirement?
Right.
And ironically, it's always a no.
Right. I didn't know what to do.
And that's David Tyree with the Giants. That's Phil Kuntz, a Navy SEAL. All high level people. Really, they're just thrown into this retirement / second career space, and they're trying to decide what to do.
What do I do now? Right. And then usually they get stuck in a weird gig, or they're working something they didn't want to work. And then, like you said, Victoria, those bad habits start rolling in. I turn to alcohol, right? I use alcohol as something that I alleviate stress with, or I use food as something I alleviate stress with. And for people that haven't played a sport before or haven't been under a lot of pressure, Victoria, I'm guessing you've played in some pretty high pressure games in your college career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you're under that pressure, you rely on your teammates to help with that pressure. But once you've surpassed that and get it, it's a lot harder to go back towards now. And right, and be like, now I'm just going to be normal. I'm not going to think about that pressure.
Well, and that's a huge reason, like, why I do what I do, and at least like kind of segueing into some of the health and behavior coaching stuff that I do. So, my dad actually was a center for U of I, and then strength and conditioning coach the year that they won the Rose Bowl in '84.
Wow.
And he was a small town guy, grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois, and the only one in his family to make it to college, and really like had the whole small town come and see all of his games. Like, he was kind of that local successful hero. Everyone wanted to come see him succeed. And that was he was very talented, very strong guy. And, unfortunately, just playing in the 80s, and I don't know how your body feels, but he was in rough shape by the age of 23. He was already having hip arthritis issues and arthritis and microfractures in his vertebrae from those hard hits all the time. I mean, I saw his game helmet. It was just
shattered.
Bashed.
Yeah, just shattered. Yeah, I have a helmet. If you were looking at my basement right now, you could see my helmets on my basement because I have them set up. But if you look hard enough, you see all the divots and all like the scratch marks on them.
His head was 3 times smaller before he started playing.
It's swallowed up a lot, Mark. That's your fault, though.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard impact all the time. So his body just really took a beating. And like after that, he tried out for the Eagles. And I think at that time, he had so much arthritis in his hips and had that fracture in his vertebrae. They're like,
No, sorry.
We
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, it was too much of a liability. So at that point, it was really hard for him to figure out what to do. And he did, over the course of his career, he found sales in a medical company, which works out really well for somebody that's in sports and can present themselves in that physical way,
It's just
but
always
very
what it is,
stressful to
right? With
have
an
that
athlete, we're
transition.
used to it.
And he ended up turning to alcohol and unfortunately passed away 5 years ago because of that. Very high functioning alcoholic. Nobody knew, but it was an issue that, I saw firsthand and is a big reason why I do what I do and why I work with professionals to help them find other ways to cope with that kind of stress and that transition in their life, whether that's a transition out of the sport or a transition in a divorce or a job transition, whatever it might be. A lot of times that can bring out a lot of these unhealthy coping mechanisms and can destroy our health and our families in the long run. So it's something that's really close to my heart and why I do what I do. And, fortunately, it was something that I got the chance to start before he passed away and he got to see a little
See
bit
it.
of
Yeah.
that transition. But yeah, I mean, I've lived through that pattern firsthand through my family,
Wow.
and it's really sad and unfortunate. And I wish it on nobody because it's a really hard thing to be a part of. But the best I can do is learn from that and try to help other people not experiencing that as best as possible.
Can you explain that maybe process a little bit to our listeners?
Yeah.
I know you've worked with, other professionals, Brittany Force, with professional racing, that type of stuff. How does somebody reach out to you, contact? What should they expect
how do they get a hold
when
of
they
you?
talk to you the first time? Like, what's that consultation and that engagement look like so they get a better understanding?
Yeah. So the first time we really chat is like, I usually just do a 15-20 minute, just, hey, chat, get a gist for what they're wanting to do, what they're struggling with, really what they need help with. And it's a great opportunity for me to be able to say, hey, yeah, this is definitely something we can work on. Let's book a longer call. In which case we'll do a full hour consult at a later time that week or the next week, all complimentary. I'd love to just be able to provide that resource to people. And if not, in that initial call, if I'm not the best person to move forward with, I love to be able to, find a good resource or a good referral within my network to send them to, which happens often. So I always say, hey, even if you don't think it's I'm the best connection, still connect me and I will try to work my network and see if there's anybody that might be a good point person for this individual. But yeah, on that longer call, we really just dive through their goals, where they'd like to be 3, 6 months, even 12 months and beyond, and just kind of build that vision out for them. And look at some of the historical obstacles, what's currently in their way, what they feel like they could be doing better. If there's anything that they feel like they have no control over, that they're just up against continuously and making those changes and keep reverting back. And oftentimes, a lot of people answer that question with saying, it's myself. I'm the one that's the obstacle.
Right.
I'm the one holding
It's me.
myself
It's the
back.
man in the mirror, right?
Yeah. So yeah. And then really just starting to create that conversation, that sense of safety, because I find that a lot of people don't, I'm kind of this interim between when people either are deciding to go to a therapist or a doctor or somewhere in between. And I sometimes in that middle ground in between those two where, hey, we can talk about these things. I may need to refer you out, but let's create this space where we can just lay it all out there and see what we can do with it and see what can be moved forward with.
Well, I mean,
And then we'll
sometimes
start to piece together a plan.
an objective point of view makes a lot of sense, right? Like getting an objective point of view makes a ton of sense, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that
100%.
helps
And
a
just
ton.
being, some people are like, I have tried to change the way I've been eating for 10 years and nothing is working. And then we'll try to pick that apart a little bit and see, okay, what are some holes you may not have been able to see before that maybe we can piece this together, on this call and figure out what might be some of the issues in the way. So yeah, just really providing an ear, and those are usually an hour long. So I really like to dive deep on those calls if I can and provide that resource. And if I feel like, hey, let's see if we can work together. Let's talk about some options to move forward. Then we can decide that at the end of the call. So that's usually what the trajectory work looks like at the beginning of things.
Are you doing these mostly call, Zoom, in person? Like how do you find your business model runs?
Yeah, mostly calls, actually all calls, unless somebody has like a very hard set preference on Zoom. Personally, I focus better when I'm on phone calls. I don't know why. A lot of people, it's the opposite unless they're sitting down on a Zoom screen. But to me, I'm looking at things in the background. I'm like, oh, cool poster. So I know for me to actually tune in and actually really listen to the vocal inflections going on, I kind of have to just be tuning into all those things without the visuals. And I can really hear when somebody's voice change, when there's heaviness behind something, when there's time to ask, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about that? That sounds like a really tough experience that you're having. Or, maybe somebody is getting a little defensive of that, and I can hear that too in their voice. So really just staying attuned to that. And most of the coaching I do from the process after that call is going to be all just phone calls.
Gotcha. I mean, I feel like we've interacted with a few different coaches before as a practice, and we've had good experiences. I know that what people don't realize out there that are going to the gym and working out is that 80% of the battle happens at the table, right? What you put in your body, what you eat, how much you eat. You can work out 3 times a day, but if you eat 12 donuts every time you work out, after you work out, right, it's going to be really hard to get the physical results that you want. But one thing I will tell you, Victoria, that I love what you're circling around is that the body type, right? The approach that people have to their physical appearance is amazing. I love seeing people on Instagram and YouTube showing that being muscular isn't bad. Being big and being strong, it's not a bad thing. It's okay to be big and strong. Listen, my daughter, she's 5'1" already. She's 8 years old. Okay, she's like dad, right? She's gonna be hopefully like you, playing volleyball or probably swimming or something in college. But she's gonna
shoulders, yeah.
She's gonna have. She has broad shoulders, right? She's gonna be a very oversized woman, and it's okay to be strong and muscular. It's fine. And I love that push. Everyone calls it muscle mommies, right? You know what I mean? And my wife works out 5 days a week, and I love it because, 20 years ago, it was faux pas to be a strong woman, right? And now it's not. It's not, and I'm glad it's not because we need that. We need it for our society. We need it to strengthen our minds and our bodies,
Yeah. And there's no sense in me trying to shrink myself down into a body type that just isn't going to make, I've done that. I've tried that before. It doesn't work.
Fun.
It doesn't feel good for me.
No.
Just because of societal pressures back 10, 15 years ago, I was like, maybe I should try to make myself small. It's just not how I'm built. I was similar to your daughter. Like I was my full height and weight that I am now when I was like
12.
11. So,
yep. So you were taller than most of your teachers, right? They were like, hey, Victoria, how you doing? I remember I was that way too.
But the bad thing for that, I mean, we have some family friends who, the parents are both, I mean, the mom's like 5'10", 5'11", the dad's like 6'6". Like you've met Brian. And their sons are very large. And the problem at the younger age is people expect more from them.
Yep.
From an interaction standpoint.
Because they think they're adults. They're as big as an
adult. And you're saying, they're only 8. But, even though they look like a 13-year-old, they still are acting like an 8-year-old, which they should be. But, sometimes that plays into the child's psyche a little bit because...
That's such an interesting point. And I was actually just talking to my husband about this last week, how looking at pictures, because we were seeing some relatives and looking at pictures of what I looked like at even 4 years old. I looked like a full-grown 8-year-old at that point. And people were probably, asking around like, why is she throwing a tantrum like she's a little kid? It's like I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Because I was 4, man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point for athletes having kids are probably going to grow a little bit faster, a little bit bigger than other kids, and to make sure, you're parenting them as if they are their actual age. That's an important point.
For the athletes and or businesses out there that need to talk to someone that's going to help them with coaching, Victoria, what is the easiest way to get a hold of you so that they have your contact info? The best way to get in touch with Victoria, how do we do it?
Oh yeah, I mean, just hopping over to my website is probably the easiest way. It's bevictoriouscoaching.com, and then I have a contact form on there. If you want to give me a phone call, phone information's on there, and email, all that good stuff. So that's the easiest way to find it and peruse around, see if there's anything that looks interesting to you.
So it's BeVictorious, so BeVictorious.com.
Coaching.com.
BeVictoriousCoaching.com. So for all of our listeners out there that are athletes or that are dealing with some type of eating or physical issue or they're needing coaching, that's the best way to get a hold of Victoria.
Oh, we could put a link in.
We'll put a link in. Yeah, we got a software to do a link. So Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy that you had a chance to come on and talk with us a little bit today. I guess my only other question would be, as you transitioned out from college into the business world, I guess what was the hardest part of that transition? Was it money? Was it starting to save? Was it a variety of things? Because I know it's really hard to find someone you trust and take those steps, especially, with the stress you were under with losing your dad. I mean, how old are you? Like 24, 20?
You're not
I'm
supposed to ask
I'm
that,
30,
Matt.
32 now.
32?
He doesn't know he's not supposed to ask
Thank
that.
you.
I thought you were like 24, 25. I'm sorry. So, but I mean, you were under duress. Like, what was the hardest thing on the transition?
Yeah, I mean, that was a hard transition point because at that point when I was graduating, I started to recognize the reality of what was going on. So I think, I mean, even putting that aside, because I know that's kind of an abnormal situation to go through. A lot of college athletes thankfully don't have that going on in addition to them graduating and figuring out what to do next. But I think I see this a lot with the girls that I used to coach as well. There's this pressure to figure it out as fast as possible, and because you've always done that as an athlete, you've been in this successful position. I think there's this mindset that that's going to transfer over to the real world immediately, and that you're going to immediately find your thing and you're going to succeed in it. Be okay trying different things out and be okay with it not looking like the stereotypical success for a little bit. Find a way to find fulfillment in that exploration phase. And I think that really was what helped me the most, was being okay. Like, I floated around for most of my 20s trying out different things until I really figured out what landed. And honestly, it's until you make those connections and that trusted network of people, like, that's when real things start to happen. But your network is such a huge impactful piece of that. So use your young and mid 20s to connect with great people, connect with great leaders, keep your social network strong, and a lot will come from that. I'm a big believer in that, and I've had some great opportunities come from just keeping my network strong of trusted professionals and trusted individuals and other successful individuals.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really great. Well, I'm not sure if you got anything else, Mark.
No, I mean, I think it was perfect content. To your last point there, the social media end of things. That I think for one generation, it's a transition that is unfamiliar to them. So they may have some stress with that. And need some coaching, and it's a behavioral change to understand that the next generation, right, and beyond is living in this digital format.
Right,
which is just like for finance, we had to change to this format.
This is one of our biggest ways we can connect with millennials.
But yet there's a lot of advisors that are hesitant about it.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Right. So in saying that, where do you see like the next direction of your business, on social media? I know you're creating a great social media presence, but how do you see that evolving in your own? Are there initiatives or things that you're trying different or trying to do that we can help support in that effort?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, I guess I really haven't thought about that as much because I think I've seen a good response so far from the video content I've been putting out and having that really connect with a younger demographic. So I'm like, I'll just keep doing that. But I guess I should think ahead beyond that a little bit, because these platforms are changing so rapidly. There's probably going to be something next beyond this that I'm not aware of. That's going to be some kind of, metaverse thing. Who knows? But
interactive.
For right now, I think it's just sharing this education on YouTube, on video platforms, and trying not to get frustrated with that process of constantly learning and there's a lot to learn out there. So try not to get frustrated with like, oh man, I gotta learn this other thing, and trying to reframe that and be like, look at this cool skill I can acquire in learning this cool new thing. And that's made that bridge and that gap a lot easier for me personally, to want to learn how to engage on new platforms and to share content in a different format and to communicate a little bit differently too. So yeah, I think that's a great question. And one I'll probably need to think on a little bit more.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. At all times, we're trying to elevate that next level. And that's why, again, we need to hire a 22-year-old girl that's good on Instagram, because I don't know what I'm doing. but halfway there, I'm like, Sammy, come here. You got to help me with the Instagram. I don't know what I'm doing. As always, we're here at Your Coach, Your Money to educate and motivate young athletes to make great financial decisions. So happy Victoria came on with us today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following. You can always, Mark always does a great
You
outro
can
here.
reach us at 844-444-YTYM for your time, your money. You can find us at yourtimeyourmoney.net for your net worth. And as always, we're at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, New York, 12110. So please like and subscribe. Our goal is to get to 500 by the end of the year, so we can donate $500 to a random charity in the hat.
Yes. Oh, what charity do you work closely with, Victoria? I almost forgot.
I would say Lend a Hand Uganda is probably one of the closest ones that I'm working with right now. She's a friend of mine who has been a part of this charity, and all it is just buying a lunch for some kids in Uganda, and you can do a one-time donation or a repetitive donation to help feed them lunch for as little as $5 or as much as $15 a day. So that is LAHU. It's LAHU.org if you want to check that out.
We will check it out.
Great, and they'll be in the hat. So,
It'll be in the hat. It'll go in the hat.
Very cool. Awesome. That's
share
great.
share the podcast, and maybe some of your followers will jump on.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. And as always, it's
Your coach
and your money.